Hello, everyone, and welcome to the First Class Lacrosse podcast. My name is Matt Dunn, and today I am joined by my co-host, Deemer Class. We are thrilled to be interviewing University of Georgetown men's lacrosse head coach, Kevin Warne. Coach Warne is entering his 13th season as Georgetown's head coach. He has 111 wins, which is second in program history. They've won 6 consecutive Big East championships, and Coach Warne is the 5-time Big East Coach of the Year. And in 2021, he was the USILA Division I Coach of the Year. Coach's coaching career includes coaching at the Merchant Marine Academy in 2000, Delaware from 2001 to 2004, UMBC from 2004 to 2007, Harvard from 2007 to 2010, Maryland from 2010 to 2012, and in 2012, Coach got the head coach job at Georgetown, where he is to this day. Additionally, Coach Warne was recently named an assistant at the U.S. men's national lacrosse team. Coach is considered one of the greatest defensive minds in our sport, known for his schematics and drilling just as much as his ability to connect with players and get the most out of them. He has coached many All-Americans and current pro players, and all the guys that have played for Coach Warne rave about him both as a coach and a person. I unfortunately never got the chance to play for Coach Warne. However, he recruited me to the University of Maryland, and he took the head coach job at Georgetown a few weeks before I got there. But either way, Coach, we're excited to have you to the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Well, I tell you one thing, that is one heck of an introduction. If you could get a copy of that from me, that would be great. I need a little gas up as we start the season here. So appreciate that. And obviously hopping on with you two guys. You guys are great and looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, Matt, he recruited you, but he didn't recruit me. So now I'm feeling a little down. I need a booch up as we start the podcast.
Well, Deemer, I mean, Maryland and Duke don't always, go after the same crowd of guys. Like, I couldn't get the nod from Duke either. So
we went there to start off. So it's good.
Yeah, Coach, excited to have you on. It's been fun, being someone that played for Coach Danowski. He's someone that takes a lot of pride in all the coaches across the different sports at Hofstra. He put that out, recently in a note to some of the alums and also obviously guys that have coached with him and played for him. So he shared stories along the way. So it's awesome to get to chat with you today. And it's been fun getting to know you over the past few years. So excited to chop it up.
We got a few questions planned. We understand the conversation will probably get a life as its own as we get going. We all have heard and read about Coach Warne, the coach. I want to spend a minute on Coach Warne, the player, before we get too far away from this. 1995 to 99, Hofstra, 2-time conference award winner, I believe, and All-American honors senior year. I've heard things about a kayak check in a quarterfinal game that we're still looking for the film of. But help us understand, what was Coach Warne the player like? Playing style, what was your go-to strengths, all of those things?
Wow. I feel great that you are actually asking me this question. Here's the first thing. I did this. My mother gave me a whole bunch of games we had from Sports Channel. For everybody from Long Island knows they used to have all the games there, and I was able to get them digitized and on a USB drive. So I was showing my son me playing, and he looked at me. He's like, "Dad, you're really slow." And then I started watching a little bit more, and I go, "Wow, I am really slow." Most great athletes change the direction on a dime. I changed direction on a manhole cover. And it was not pretty. But as I just started laughing watching these old games, and it just seeing how much the game has changed, but just watching, listen, I was a guy, I wasn't a great athlete, but I felt like I needed to use my IQ. I always tell everybody, anytime I do any demonstrations or any speeches, I always say I played great angles. I wasn't the fastest guy. I'm not going to run a 4.240 off the end line to the goal line extended, but I had to be a great mathematician and find those great angles to make sure I got to a spot before the other guy did. So that's kind of who I was.
Yeah, I actually I texted one of your former teammates, Brad Oblage, who I've come across, and said you guys lived together for a year or two, but he was praising the angle play, and he described you as a lax rat, always knowing the opposing players, the stat lines, things like that. And I think that's really cool to hear because you can't teach that. That's someone's inner drive and passion for studying the game and loving the game. And, would love to hear, some of your thoughts on that. And hey, do you try to inspire your players to be the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a job, right? I don't go to work. I have a passion that I love, and it's, I wake up every day I'm wearing right now a golf shirt, Nike khakis, and a quarter zip. Like that's awesome, right? And I get to coach lacrosse, be around young guys. I'm getting old, but certainly being around 18 to 23-year-olds all the time makes me feel young. It's a lot of fun, but I think, when you find your passion, you have that energy, you're curious to know more. And it's just being around a game that has given me so much. I know it's an answer a lot of people give, but I think it's really important to understand that, this is maybe my little way of giving back, to saying thanks, is to help somebody strive to get a little bit better and along those lines. And yeah, we'll get into the conversation later on about the coaching, how what we do in our program can help our guys down the road. But I think for me, I always wanted to kind of be a coach. It's so cool, so unique, and you have so much influence on guys to help them be as good as they want to be or good as they can be. And I think that's a daily challenge, but it's a lot of fun too.
Coach, was lacrosse always your sport growing up? Was that always your main sport? Did you always know you wanted to be a lacrosse player or coach, or did that kind of evolve later throughout high school?
I think it evolved by me not playing football. So I played football in the 9th grade and back on Long Island. My junior high school was grade 7, 8, and 9. And you went to Ward Melville, it was 10, 11, 12. So I kind of gave up my dream of playing for the New York Jets when I realized my only position in 9th grade was on the punt team. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure this is gonna make it. But again, kind of talking, where we come from, lacrosse said, I went to Ward Melville High School, and lacrosse at Ward Melville was and is very important. So I go, I know people like to talk about the 2-sport athletes and all that stuff, but if you want to be good at something, you got to do it a lot, right? You got to practice a lot. You got to hone those skills that are really necessary for you to be a good, player or whatever in whatever sport you're in. And I felt like I needed to play a lot of lacrosse, maybe because I wasn't the greatest athlete, and that's okay, but you had to find ways to be successful and find ways for you to have an edge over guys who might be more athletic, might have better IQ than you. And I think a lot of that is repetition and just playing, which has evolved in my coaching philosophy.
Well, it's kind of interesting you bring up the multi-sport piece, because I feel like there are, different views around it. Like we had Coach Janowski on our first pod, he's a very big believer in the multi-sport athlete. But then also when you talk about different development stages for athletes, it does get to a point where if you get a lot of the benefit from the multi-sports and then you start to specialize, you can really dive deeper and start to master your craft. And so even for you, like you stop playing football, focus on lacrosse, and then combine that with that curiosity piece that gets you to where you need to be, so it can work both ways. And I feel like everyone's different with that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when we recruit young men, or anybody that recruits in an athletic setting, it's, not just the skill set, but I want them, or you want to be exposed to different coaches, different teaching methods, right? Maybe there's one coach. We all had one coach when we grew up. It was like, that's the guy who just was able to absorb everything. He made the complex simple, and maybe he was a hockey coach. Maybe he was a basketball coach. Maybe it was your lacrosse coach, and I think that helps you get better overall. Again, I'm a huge believer in the more experiences you have, the more you get exposed to, the better off you will be, because you'll know how to react to things, good and bad. So I think that's really, really important. But even when we recruit, we play a skill sport. You want to be a highly skilled guy, you're going to have to work at it, and I kind of joke with my son. My son's a long stick midi who's a 2034. Believe it or not, I'm in that world. So I don't have him watch anything on Matt Dunn. Total opposite. So that's really good. But he'll go out and he says, I want to play attack, Dad. Of course. Okay. So I said, okay, go do some things, go shoot and all that stuff. And, he's okay with it, but he realized it's like, wow, this is really tough sometimes, one-handed cradle and all this stuff. He'd rather just, poke check and body check somebody and trail check. That's what he likes to do. But, just you got to practice at being elite, right? And you're going to have to do that at some point in your development. Guys will hit that switch to go, hey, this is the way, I might be able to get to the next level, or I'll be exposed to some things that'll help me later on in life. But I do think in the recruiting process, right, we look at guys that play other sports, the carryover or the compound effect sometimes of, I love recruiting hockey players, right? Guys who can pick the ball off the deck really quick. The hockey guys change direction. They drop their hips. You do that in lacrosse, you're lights out. That's a tough skill to teach, right? So I do think there's benefits to looking at it both ways.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about a lot. Like I grew up a basketball guy. I didn't play defense in lacrosse till 7th or 8th grade. But you look at it like there's some things where you get a defender later on in their career. And it's hard to teach some of the flowy stuff, the head turn, the feel the ball movement, but you naturally get that in a hockey, a basketball, maybe a soccer, maybe if you're a linebacker in football, you just get it at a younger age because there's this skill cap on lacrosse where if guys can't catch and throw well before the age of 14, you're never going to get exposed to like a flowy offense where the ball moves and you have to rotate. So you might have a great stick, but you've never really been in an environment where you get challenged in this like off ball movement phase like you might in a basketball or hockey. So it's something that like I feel like I benefit from, but to your point, you do reach a point in your career where, okay, now you actually have to be able to catch and throw and dodge and develop the lacrosse specific skill set you need to play at a high Division I level school if that's where you want to go.
Right. Well, I also think, just nowadays when we get guys coming into our program or anybody, they are so much more developed than ever. I mean, it is unbelievable. I joke with our guys and, even, we're talking to, prospective student athletes. I talk to guys. I'm like, when I played summer league back in high school, you played on your high school team. You played one game a week, and the season was 8 weeks long. So you played at another high school, and you might have played on a Monday night, and then you wouldn't play till the following Thursday night. Like that's how it was. And guys now are playing seasons worth in 2 or 3 weeks, so they're getting exposed and their skill level is obviously going through the roof. The individual sessions that everybody has, the shooting coaches, all the stuff, even that everybody does, it's really beneficial. So we are getting a product that's much further along than when I played.
Yeah. So coach, like, to kind of round out your playing career a little bit, talk a little bit about playing for Coach Danowski, and some of the influence and impact that he had on your playing career, but also, coaching in general. Yeah,
Coach is a great man. I will always be indebted to Coach. He took a chance on me. Part of my journey, quite honestly, in high school, I didn't play my junior year. I played one quarter in 23 games in my junior year. Back in the day, when I was at Warren Melville, I was brought up to varsity. The big thing was getting brought up to varsity during the playoff season after the JV season ended. Not like it is today, where there might be some 8th graders or 9th graders on teams, and that's a natural occurrence, or it happens all the time. And I was one of those guys that was brought up. And then my junior year, I didn't play. So it was an awesome experience to just go through that and then have a pretty good senior year. But during the senior year, that's where, the old guys, that's the year we got recruited. And I remember Coach coming to an indoor game, and indoor when we played it was about a mile from my house. And it was, again, a high school league. You had regulation goals in the goals and with long sticks. So you had 5-on-5, and the games were like 29-28. They were awesome. And you played, those leagues, and Coach came to watch somebody and got my name at maybe at camp or whatever. And I guess he kind of liked me. He liked something. Back then it was, gosh, and I joke with our guys as well. I think I was like 5'11", 162 pounds when I graduated high school. I'm not that now, but, just this lean string bean out there, and got to know me and went on an official visit and kind of loved everything about Hofstra, and then being part of his program, and obviously what he's done at Duke is unbelievable. But Coach is still the same coach to me. He is a tremendous people person. He looks for the best in people. There's no doubt about it. He motivates you. I think a lot of people only get to see him for the 2 or 3 hours that he's on TV, but behind the scenes, he's a coach. I laugh at some of the things that I say or I do. And I'm like, Coach did that to me. Or now I know why I drove Coach nuts. That's the way it was. And I'll always be indebted for him for giving me the opportunity to go to Hofstra and live out my dream of playing college lacrosse.
You said you kind of knew you wanted to be a coach. Did that happen at Hofstra? Did you know in high school you're like, I want to stay in sports, I want to be a lacrosse coach? How did that kind of come about for you?
Well, it was in college, and kind of I always liked watching film. I liked watching other teams play. Again, to me, that wasn't work. It was fun. I guess saying, I know there's guys out there that might be better than me, and that's great. And like, how do I be that good? Or how can I work something into my game that somebody else is doing? All right. And I kind of did that, and I had to I changed majors in college, so I had to stay an extra a little time. And one of my first job was coaching high school with one of my old college roommates, and we did that, and then I was hooked. Like it was over from there, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, and certainly went on, as you mentioned earlier, just my coaching progression, so to speak. But just always being curious, always wanted to understand X's and O's a little bit more, and kind of like just being in this environment, and it's something I felt comfortable with, and I still don't know if I know what I'm doing, but it's going okay, I guess.
So then let's talk a little bit about your first few years. You mentioned the high school experience, you get hooked, you start getting into, the college realm. How are you trying to learn the craft? Who was helping you along the way and being a better coach? We'd love to hear about that. Because also, obviously now you're the head coach of Georgetown. It's such a huge job, and people see that, right? But people don't always know all the ups and downs and the challenges that guys like yourself have been through to get to where you are now. So we'd love to hear about those early days.
Back whether it was high school or certainly when I went to the Merchant Marine Academy, Coach Tom Gill was my first boss, and he was awesome. He was a Hofstra guy, but he was also a guy that gave me a lot of responsibility and kind of had to figure out on your own, right? And what I realized is every school or every environment has its own challenges, So I remember walking in there in the fall and at the Merchant Marine Academy. And if you're not familiar with the academy there, a lot of those guys go off to do a lot of things. Tanker ships. Just think of that world, running ports, all that stuff. It's a lot. And so during the fall, you actually. And I don't know if they still do it now, but part of their training is you lose your sophomores and juniors. They're out to sea. So they're out training to sea. So I walked in a new job and all we had was freshmen and seniors. And you're like, okay, and you just had to kind of like figure it out. Right. And I feel like one of the things to be a really good coach and a really good leader is being really humble. Right. And not trying to figure everything out. Like be curious, always wanting to know more. I think I don't claim I'm smart at all. Certainly my GPA and will certainly validate that. But I just think like I don't have all the answers. So asking people, talking to people, going to clinics, working camps, walking around in between stations when you go to camps, listen to what other people are saying, go, oh, I like that. Or that's a different way of teaching that. Now, those are things I used to do. And back then, myself and one of my old teammates, Joe Amplo, who's now the head coach at the Naval Academy. We were kind of going through this journey together in our own way. He was at Hofstra, I was at the Merchant Marine Academy. We'd get together and talk about things and then just expose yourself to other people, expose yourself to other coaches, and just be a sponge and absorb whatever it may be, how to build a team, how to just watch practice. I remember when I was at the Merchant Marine Academy, Coach Bill Lang was the head coach of the basketball team. I used to pick his brain a lot. Just expose yourself to other individuals who have been doing it and go, okay, if you pick one or two things to do, what to do and not to do, improve yourself, like it can only help. So that's kind of how you kind of did and read a lot. Right. And I'm not going to claim I'm going to read book after book, but there are so many different vehicles now for young coaches, and all these websites, or just followers on Twitter or X, whatever the heck you call it now. It's just read a little snippet here and there. You pick up so many things. Read press conferences or listen to press conferences after games. Read about teams that are successful. Read about teams that are not successful. Why is that happening? Like, I think those are really, really important. Those are invaluable lessons, and they're very relatable to wherever stage you're in your life.
We texted a few guys, and once again, I knew you. I've known you well over the years. I've never got the chance to play for you. I've played with a lot of guys that you've gotten to coach before, so I've heard plenty from guys like Jesse Bernhardt, Mike Earhart. Jack Rowlett worked with you. I stay in touch with Jack. Alex Mazzone is now on the With Snakes with us. So over the years, I've gotten to talk to a lot of guys that have played for you or worked with you at different capacities. And I was like, what exactly makes, what makes Coach Warne special? And you get a wide array of answers, but there's two things that always came down to, and I think one is what you get some credit for, but Mike Earhart made the point. He's like, I don't think Coach Warne gets enough credit for how great of a defensive minded coach he is. And I know you'll be humble with that, but I think you hear that enough and it's believed to be true. But the second one, and we'll come back to that, the second one was your ability to connect and form relationships with the players, but really get the most out of that. And I came and watched one of your practices 2 years ago, and I remember, I think it was maybe Will Bowen or somebody, you kind of lit him up in practice. This was in season, a senior. And then after practice, you're just chopping it up with those guys for like 30 minutes, laughing, joking. And that's what like Earhart and Jesse kind of tell me, like he would coach the crap out of you and get on you and get the best out of you. But at the same time, he connected with you on a unique level. You felt like you could go to him about anything. And I guess I want to dig in there. Is that something that's just easy and natural for you? Did you pick that up from somebody along the way and were really intentional with that? Because it keeps coming back as your kind of superpower, if you will.
Oh, those are all nice things that those guys said. I will say one of the things that I realized a couple of years back was I need to be myself, right? And I felt like sometimes you get into the coaching profession, and you see football coaches or you see other coaches that you respect, and like, oh, they're really successful. This is how I got to do things. We're all here for our own reasons, right? We all have strengths. So finding your strength is, I think, part of the journey, quite honestly, right? And being who you are and being comfortable who you are. As a coach, I probably, you talk to other coaches on the recruiting trail and stuff like that. Like, I'm laughing, like I'm making jokes, and guys like, how the heck you get anything done? I'm like, I'm just being me. Like, I have a plan. I know what I'm doing, but I think at the same time, when you realize who you are, you're comfortable in what you're doing, right? And you can be more authentic. Like, guys understand, like, I am who I am. And if I am who I am, I'm truthful. And if I am who I am and I'm truthful, then they can see the consistency. Yeah, I might go crazy at times, right? I might joke at times, and maybe some people say, well, that's inconsistent. No, but it's consistent with what I am, right? So if our guys can see that, yeah, you do something right, we're going to get all fired up about it. You do something wrong, we're going to get all fired up about it. We're going to tell you why and everything like that. But I think, and hopefully, maybe I forced myself early on into a mold of, this is how you coach, this is what you do. I'm a big Alabama football fan, and reading, Coach Saban books and all this stuff. I thought maybe, coaching, you read chapter, 3 through 11, and he wins, a whole bunch of national championships. Like, oh, that's all you got to do? Great. But he's him. I'm me, and I can't do the things he can do. I'm not sure he wants to be Kevin Warne, or does he know who the heck I am? But at the same time, when you're comfortable with yourself, you get a more authentic self. And I think that's really, this is who I am. And this is all part of the recruiting process and relationship piece and whatever it may be. It's like, this is what you're going to get. Do you want to hang around this for a couple of years? But, again, you're either going to love it or you're not going to love it. And that's okay. But at least I am being myself, and I can put my head in the pillow at night and say, I'm trying to be the best version of myself to help our guys, but at least our guys know who I am.
I think the cool takeaway for me from that too is when you read anything around sports culture and leadership now, the relationships piece is like the buzzword, right? But what I kind of take away and what I'm hearing from you too is everyone's effort to build relationships can look a lot different, but as long as you're being authentic to who you are, which, it sounds like you are, and we can see that and we hear that from so many people. So I think that's a good takeaway for young coaches too, is find your ways to connect, whether you're tweeting about wearing your Jordans on game day, right? And you got your that kind of vibe going with different guys, like different things I feel like can, really push that forward, and it looks different for everyone. So it's like you said, finding your strengths it's such a great piece of advice.
Well, it's like, I will comment on some of our guys, on their Instagram stories. I'll write something, to guys, and we have way too many Ravens fans, and I'll just be like, hey, go Jets. And I'll just keep writing that, like stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be forced. It doesn't have to be every day. But I think also, when you're building a company or building a program in my world here, it's, having those guys come up to the office, having those guys saying what's up on the field, how we doing, all those things, or maybe a text after practice, because I think sometimes nowadays, everybody's busy, we all communicate through this thing, but a part of our job is to help our guys communicate face to face. So being able to do that and doing it in a setting where maybe it doesn't have to be office, back in the day, you're like, you got sent to coach's office. Oh my gosh. It was like, you can't be yourself, but if you're on the field, you're joking around, and we'll get after guys in practice, and then the next day in film, I'll be like, hey, remember we get after you yesterday? We'll make some jokes and all that stuff, and I think it creates a cool environment that guys can let their guard down and be like, okay, hopefully they believe that I have their best intentions, for that.
Yeah, and that's a theme. I feel like when we've started these podcasts, I don't know, 4 months ago, and I've noticed it with coaches I've played for, but one thing that keeps getting brought up is just like creating, like having fun through this process, which, you read a Nick Saban book, like maybe that's not important, or if you're a serious player, serious coach, there could be times where you focus so much on what you want to accomplish. But I mean, as a player and, as a coach, like it can be pretty heavy at times where like you're a college athlete, you got school going on, you really care about lacrosse. So they want to please you. They want to earn a starting spot. They want to win games. And if everything becomes so serious all the time, it can really burn guys out. And I think seeing Coach Warne, head coach, be so serious sometimes, but then laugh and joke with players on the team, but also joke with staff. So like, I think seeing the staff have a good time together can bleed over to the team when they're like, hey, you know what? We're allowed to have fun here. This is cool because we're spending a lot of time in the locker room, in the film room, and all of those things. And I think something that you've, really tapped into is that allows you to push guys harder because they have so much more buy-in from the players. And that's something Mazzone said, Alex Mazzone to me was, I think the greatest thing was he got us to buy in so much that like there was just so much trust in what we were doing, and he listened to us when we gave feedback and he trusted us. And so it wasn't always him, he obviously knows more about defense than all of us, but he would take input from us and trusted us to do that. And I think that's what made him such a great coach, and us love playing for him, is that humility, that willingness to connect with us and value us was huge.
You bring up a couple good points there. It's like part of what I kind of realized 6 or 7 years ago was maybe when I first got the head coaching job, we all have a plan on what we want to do and everything, right? And I was like, you know what, I got to do everything myself. This is how it's got to be, this and that. And I probably did an awful job of paying attention to other people, maybe delegating a little bit more. I kind of felt like this is the way it's got to be. This is what we did at Maryland. This is what we did in my experiences. And, and then when I realized, and just to go, you know what, we got to be in this thing together. Like my job is based on the actions of 18 to 23-year-olds. I'm not sure it's the smartest thing in the world, right? So it's like, socially, lacrosse-wise, academically, there's a whole bunch of things that go into that. So let's be in this thing together. And the deal is, all right, guys who want to come here, hey, listen, you're going to be afforded great opportunities, you're going to get a great education, all the things that are great about Georgetown. And then at the same time, we're going to win some games. And then that kind of in turn helps me. So it's like it's a two-way street, but I think you're going to have that open conversation and say, hey, listen, we got to be in this thing together. There are going to be times we're going to love each other, and there are going to be times you probably don't like me, but we're going to get in this thing together. We're going to spend 4 years, sometimes 5, or maybe 1 year, whatever it may be, and we're going to try and make the most of this thing. And I think when you have that feeling or that thought process, those conversations and everything are a little bit different. And the humility piece, as we talked about before, I don't know everything. I will never claim to be smarter than any of my guys book-wise. I've just experienced a lot more. I've been part of good teams. I've been part of teams that maybe didn't reach their expectations or their goals, and there's reasons why. So all I can say is, Dave, from my experiences, this is what we need to do. What do you guys think? We talked about it before. You said it before, Matt, where it's like on Fridays when we do game plans, I'm like, hey guys, go over the game plan. What do you guys like? Coach, we don't like this. All right, it's out. I'm not playing the game. You guys are, and that's that trust factor. Or, Coach, I don't understand why we're doing, this versus that, or why are we doing this? Well, this is why we're doing it. Well, I don't like that. Okay, well, listen, can you do this? Like, okay, now I kind of get it. You find that happy medium. At the end of the day, I'm not playing a game. So what is going to allow our guys to be most successful? We want our guys to be as comfortable as possible, right? And have that and just have a great positive attitude to go, okay, we know what the plan is. We know what it is. Coach trusts us. Then that's all part of that relationship piece. And it can show up on the field, off the field, in the office, socially, whatever it may be. You got to have that alignment. And that starts, certainly in the recruiting process here in the college setting, and say, this is what we're about. But when you have like-minded guys that are all doing the same thing and pushing towards the same direction, your chances of success are to go through the roof.
So, Coach, building off that, it kind of brought to mind for me, one, when you started your career to where you are now, there's been a huge shift in technology. It's well documented. The phones, you mentioned the point about getting guys more face-to-face or not always in the office. You're a parent yourself. So as you've seen challenges evolve with building relationships and building trust, what have been some actionable things that you feel like you've done? And maybe you've already mentioned a few, but that have kind of been able to help you address some of those changes and how kids are growing up today versus how kids are even growing up 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Listen, I think, it's so funny with that. You want to do as much face-to-face as possible. So when we also, along those lines, you want to have guys, part of our job is to develop them as leaders, right? I really believe that. And I think the way we do things in our program allows us to get better communicating. For instance, we'll start off every year, we'll put guys in meal groups. And what it is that I'll give them 3 or 4 questions, and I'll group the teams together, guys that play different positions from different areas of the field. They go out, and then they come back, when we decide after one practice, a group a day, and they'll talk about their teammate, right? And all of a sudden they'll, guys, and some of it's a joke and everything like that, but it works on getting to know your teammate, right? Maybe a person you don't know. The strength of that relationship, none of those questions I give them are about lacrosse. Nobody cares about what club you played for, what high school, all that stuff. It's like, let's know more about you. I feel like a more connected team is a better team. So if we know more about you, the person, you're going to fight for that guy a little bit more. And I think doing those meal groups is pretty cool. Like I said before, we have a thing where we have all of our guys do their whys, right? So we have a why meeting and what really drives a guy. It's certainly something I ask recruits when they're in the office, right? And I want to know what makes you tick, man. Like, I want to know, because if we're going to be good leaders, we have to understand what buttons to push, right? And get to know you on a deeper level. And we have our whys, and our guys will, in the spring, they'll stand up and talk about their why. And we have our core values and then a picture of their why, and it's in their locker. It's the last thing they see before they leave. Right. And then that leadership even more to enhance that. We have accountability groups. We have our senior class draft our entire team, and you're in charge of the actions of those guys. Right. And now you're developing that leadership. And sometimes leadership, that's a whole nother conversation where I'm not sure it needs to be just seniors. I think everybody can be a leader via actions. But I think for us, it's part of our job is to teach that, because we don't want our guys going just to work, later on in life. We want our guys to be the CEO. right? So when you're in that moment when your boss is telling you, hey, we need you, can we get this account? Can we buy this building, this and that? Like, though the same characteristics to build a successful team or a successful group within a team are the same characteristics that make our team successful, right? Though those things don't vary that much. So the more training you have at them, the better you will, supposedly, hopefully will be.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think, and I'm going to ask one kind of follow-up, and maybe you actually covered it, but maybe it's a little broader. And it's just, obviously connection's important, leadership's important, the guys buying in and wanting to be there. You're creating we're talking a lot about culture right now, and the culture you've built at Georgetown is one where there's trust, there's authenticity. Are there other things that are, I don't know if you guys have, some programs have their standards or their non-negotiables, or what is Georgetown culture outside of the trust, the connection, the buy-in? Are there other things that for you are I'm building this team, we need to have this, or guys know Coach Warne expects this from us, not necessarily X and O technique lacrosse wise, but as a Georgetown lacrosse player? Are there some other things that build into that culture that you're trying to cultivate?
Yeah, we have a couple of things. Something that'll never change with Georgetown lacrosse is the acronym GATA. That was brought by Coach Urick, who passed away last week, and he is Georgetown lacrosse, and what an awesome human being. An awesome coach. Just hearing the stories from our alums about him and his influence even today in our program it's fascinating. It's unbelievable. It's if I'm a quarter of the coach that he was, then I'm going to be in pretty good shape, man. So it's he's awesome. But having David Shriver, who is an alum on staff, has really helped us, right? So that GATA mentality, and it means get after their rear end. You can imagine what the last A stands for, but it's just a mindset. And when he was here, and he gives his GATA lesson, his history lesson, in the first meeting of the year, he'll talk about it and what it means, and a lot to Coach Urick's teams, or the teams that he was a part of when he was at Georgetown, was the toughness and, being physical and picking up tough ground balls and all that stuff. And kind of for us, it's been energy and effort. And every team will certainly fit into, that category, or what they believe in or what they do in that year under GATA. But it's evolving as an identity. But that's something that will always stay with the program. And for me, we have Care 3, right? So it's commitment, accountability, relationships, then effort, energy, and execution. That's kind of one thing that we have. And then the other two things, you don't have too many things, but we can't be a team full of posters. We got to be a team full of action. There's no doubt about it. But we're talking about commit to the G, right? And Deemer, this kind of goes to what you were talking about earlier, was that is one of our mantras where, what is Georgetown lacrosse about? We have 52 guys in the locker room. We need guys to think alike, right? You got to change people's thought process to get to where you want to go, or be consistent with it, right? That alignment we talked about from top to bottom. So commit to the G. That's that umbrella. And what it basically means is that everything that you do, or every decision you make, you think about what's best for Georgetown lacrosse first. And when you do that, okay, now you got a better chance of having that alignment. What it also does, it has a hidden level of accountability, where now a guy can go, and feel, maybe it's a sophomore saying to a senior, maybe it's a freshman saying to a junior, maybe it's whatever it may be, to go, hey, commit to the G. Hey, are you doing that? Are you making that decision? Are we committed to the G there? And it's not, oh, why are you yelling at me? All that stuff. It's okay. I get it. We're thinking about the team. We're thinking about the program rather than themselves. And and that's all part of, the process we go through, and the recruiting process, and our guys hear it every year. And it's something, when they self-police one another, you have a chance. You really do. And hopefully we've done things, and all of the exercises we've talked about before, when we talk about those things, they permeate throughout the program and everything that we do. And sometimes we need, and maybe the coaches need to have a little bit of a push to get guys in one direction. And some years, if you look at the picture behind me, that's a class of 2018. That was our first recruiting class here. Those are the seniors of our first Big East championship. And they were a group that laid a blueprint out that every class has basically followed, and put their own twist to it, to just to basically, these are the standards of the program, over the last bunch of years, and guys have followed suit year after year.
Yeah, that self-policing and that peer leadership, I feel like for every team, it's different. And if you can unlock that, it's powerful. Like college guys, like college kids, high school kids, you really care what your peers think, and if your peers are holding you to that standard and reinforcing those things, I think it's really powerful.
It's the hardest thing to do, right? So my definition of accountability is, can you find a difference of a friend or a teammate inside the lines and outside the lines, right? Because you're boys with somebody and you're you're hanging out in the dorm or in the house, whatever it may be. And then, you may be playing defense, they're playing offense, and they don't give effort. Are you a guy like, that is my boy, I'm not going to say anything? Or my boy was late for a class. Are you going to confront him? And that's where that commit to the G is. Well, we want guys that want to do that. We want guys that, and you're not doing it to, get after a guy or put him down or anything. It's like, dude, this is what we need to do to win games. Like, you may think this might be insignificant, but it has a lot of significance. So if we're able to self-police that and make our guys aware that, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Like, one of the greatest quotes that Coach Saban has is, it takes what it takes. Like, we could talk about, we could list out, we can have a great PowerPoint or presentation on what makes successful team. It takes what it takes, man. Like, you got to do things. And when everybody understands that, then you'll give yourself a chance. No doubt about it.
And that stuff, I think for a lot of people listening, sometimes people say their standards and all of those, and it sounds obvious, but it's hard to get something that's really clear and consistent that captures everything you want to build and not change it every year and not, move it around all the time so it's a moving target. But guys just know, like, commit to the G, whatever it is. Like, we understand what that means. Everybody on the team can say it, and that encompasses like the core structure of what the team needs to have, the team heartbeat.
Well, it's also, they can say it, they got to do it. And that's the hardest part sometimes. We can say it and go over, have a great video like I mentioned earlier, but if you don't believe in it, you won't do it. So getting those guys to believe and giving them reasons or giving them examples of, hey, if you do this, this could happen. This is what I do. Like, none of us can guarantee success in anything, right? You got to work at it. But that doesn't mean, while I worked at it, I put this many hours in. I told Deemer he had to go to lifting. I told Matt to go to class and all that stuff. Like, we're going to win, 20-0 this Saturday. No, it might give you a better chance of success. But I do know if you don't do it, then you're in trouble. Then there's no chance. So those are the things that you're kind of hoping, when guys carry it on and believe in it and they do it, we all want to be successful. There's no doubt about it. And there's so many pieces to that puzzle.
And so, Coach, I do want to shift a little here, because one thing selfishly I wanted to get to with you, we got to end with some defense, or we got to go technical a little bit.
Sorry, Deemer.
Hey, I have loved listening to Matt over the last few years, and and I even wanted to ask you this too. Like, I've heard from a lot of coaches, when you learn the other side of the ball, it only makes you a better coach on the side that you grew up on, right? And so I've really enjoyed learning more about the defensive side. So I'm all ears here.
Where would you say, I know you talked about, you've gathered a lot over the years, other coaches, reading, going to clinics, conventions, but like, where did you really learn to coach the defensive position the way, you got to, I'll give you more specifics, but like, I talked to Jesse and Mike Gerhardt a lot, and they talk about, like, Mike's like, Coach Warne taught me everything I know about defense. I know Jesse, who's a great defensive coordinator, like, you and him have a great relationship. Where did you gather the things that you were teaching and installing guys like that? Like, what was your source and foundation for a lot of your, technical coaching ability?
Honestly, I don't think I mean this in a funny way. I think I've stolen like everything, and just kind of formulated into what I do or what I believe in. Right. And we have our tenets defensively. We play defense a little bit different than other teams. We do some things that we really believe in. And then being able to drill those things, or be able to, quite honestly, kind of like we talked about the leadership wise or our locker room, like, I'm not on the field during the game. So what can each group do defensively, in talking about defense, what can they do? What can this team handle, right? Do you have an old team? Do you have a young team? Can we slide early? What do we need to, are we really, really athletic where we can kind of go Hawaii style and everybody's on their own island, or do we need to support guys all over the place? And that's okay. I think there are ways to teach it. I've kind of looked at, I think if you're smart, you look at people who have been successful, right? See what they do, watch a lot of film, have your own ideas, and then kind of figure out, this sounds great, but what can our guys actually absorb and actually execute on game day? Because that's what it's about. We could have, 37 different, defenses or whatever it may be, but what are you going to be? Sometimes less is more, right? Are you going to be a team that, gosh, we have 2 or 3 things. Hey, we slide from the inside. Maybe we jump into some big little defense and you know what you're going to get, but we're so freaking good at it. We've seen all the adjustments you have, and it's not going to matter, right? Or are you a team where you got an older team and they can handle so many adjustments where you can, slide in different areas of the field or different quadrants and do different things. And we've had that ability to do that. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about the guys on the field, those 7 guys, right? The great defenses, right, play together. They communicate. They're always in really good position, right? They have each other's back. I always talk about with our guys in drills, especially, hey, we may have a defense dialed up where, you're on a recovery, you rotate, and then you bump out through the crease. But sometimes the way offense is played nowadays, you have no idea. Your job is to stop the possession. That's what Monday film sessions are for. Hey, maybe we could have done this. Hey, maybe you talked earlier. But guess what? Maybe one of our tenets is, one of the things that we believe in is to play faster than the offense, right? Can we get the spots? Can we make decisions for people, right? Can we do those things? And then we review it on Monday and say, hey, we did it this way. This wasn't pretty, but they didn't score, right? Can we affect shooters? I mean, we got kids nowadays. I mean, back when I played, if you're giving up shots from 11, 12 yards, that was a good shot to give up. Now guys are ripping it from 14 to 15. Deemer, you would have loved this, man. No consequence shooting, and all of a sudden just, and guys can pull it from 14 and 15. So your defensive, mindset's got to be a little bit different, right? So I think you have to always be able to adapt, be able to have some true tenets of what you believe in, how you play defense. And if you took a picture of every clip or every time the ball moved, right? For me, we have a couple of things. We call it FLDC, right? So it's your flow to landmarks, to being dodge ready, communicate, and custody. Like those are the things. And if you look every time the ball moves, do we have good flow to the ball? Does it drag us to our landmark? Are we dodge ready? And then are we communicating? And do we have custody of the crease? And every time that ball moves, if we can see our guys moving, if we're moving like this guy, then this guy, we're eventually going to be late. And that's where the offense is going to get us. But if we have good flow, we'll be okay. We'll give ourselves a chance. And then we'll be able to have great approaches. Then we'll be able to get on people's hands, affect shooters, which is a big thing nowadays. Nobody takes the ball away from anybody, but can you affect a shooter? That's really, really important to us. So those are things we kind of harp on.
One thing that kind of brings to mind for me, so John did a awesome presentation on unscripted offense in our coaches community, and some of the drills and the ways that you guys were running 4-on-4s, like it's obviously the game's becoming more positionless. You have guys moving all over the field. Guys are flowing from spot to spot. So how do you keep encouraging those defenders? You just mentioned those principles there, but there's not going to be one consistent look. Guys are going to dodge in different ways. Like you have to get comfortable figuring it out. How do you install that mindset in guys that maybe are so, goal-oriented, achievement-oriented?
For us, it's, the one thing we'll talk about is efficiency, right? In our defensive efficiency on Mondays, all the guys want to know, what was the efficiency, right? The general rule of thumb is if you can keep a team to under 25% efficiency, you have a pretty good chance. So out of possessions, and for us, our possessions, in the box, right? So it's 6-on-6 in the box. We're not talking about, there might be some games where it gets a little crazy. You play a scramble type, who the heck knows, a shootout, who knows, maybe a team that rides a lot, but for 6-on-6 inside the box, 6 guys on offense, 6 guys on defense, what's our efficiency? We keep them under 25%. Now you're talking once every 4 the possessions they're scoring, that's not bad. That's going to give you a chance to have that success. Now, for us, what I like to do, and I'm a huge believer in this, especially on the defensive end. And first of all, I thought John did an awesome job, and I appreciate you guys having him on. But I feel like nowadays you need to teach defense at a disadvantage. If you look at a lot of those drills had set rules for the defense, not so much the offense. You offensive guys, you want to score goals and look cool and all that stuff, but when there's a slide automatically, doesn't that force you guys to think a little bit faster offensively, right? So by doing that, and then that puts the defense at a disadvantage. So now how do you play 2 versus 3, 4 versus 3 on the backside? Can you get to people's hands? Are your slide and recovery, is that clean, or are we not communicating? Then you have crease action, finding areas offensively. Can we cover those areas, right? So I think you put that stress on the concepts once that initial action happens. That's all part of. I think that's a really good telltale sign of good defenses to great defense to elite defenses, right? Those, can you play 2 guys? Can you steal steps in the air? Can you move the ball? Can you drift to a spot where the guy's got to go around the cage? Can you keep your hands open for an extra step or 2? Can somebody, cut somebody? Can one guy cut hard and gets another guy open? Like all those things. And I feel like for us, that's part of, we do a lot of those types of drills, and that helps our guys IQ wise. Right, because we can all sit there and look awesome. I can look awesome in a skeleton sliding, drill. I can go back and maybe I might recruit myself again. I don't know, right? But I can defend anybody. I can defend the air. But when you get out there and it's at a disadvantage, and it creates that urgency, it creates just the heightened sense of that rep. Like that's game like. And that's what you want as a coach is how do you replicate game day? Well, you got to be able to do it Monday through Friday in our sense. And by doing those drills, it's not, okay, here we go, break down, get back, you get your stick in the air, turn this way, turn that way, the ball goes through, keep your chest up field. No, it's boom, boom, boom. And you will get exposed if you don't, have success. And that's how you learn, right? It forces guys to think fast. Right. It's not just hey, let's sit there. all right, we're going to slide. Okay, now we recover. Okay, now we're going to move the ball. All right, now redodge, put yourself in position, redodge. I don't think you've ever dodged in a game, Dima, where you take 2 or 3 steps up with your stick up going, okay, give me the ball. Okay, redodge down the alley. It's usually somebody flying at you like, oh boy, they took away strength. Now I got to totally change what I got to do. You have to have that replicated throughout the week or to make it the norm, so to speak.
Makes a lot of sense. I think an interesting thing, I think a lot of coaches are seeing how the game's becoming more fluid, chaotic. So you have to drill the advantages, disadvantages, but there's still some level of skill technique you want to work on with guys within the chaos, right? You still, okay, you can go get guys flowy and all that, but if a guy always approaches stick at his hip, or he can't get his feet under him in an efficient shuffle, or, you talk about the lateral run a lot and how to maintain position and posture. How do you balance your technique work you want with the guys within the chaos and bridging that gap from like, okay, yeah, you can go, Coach Warne can sit there with me and say, Matt, get your stick out, break down, shuffle like this. Okay. Or you can throw myself in a drill and I approach my stick and my hip. So there's somewhere in the middle where you want to bridge this gap of efficient skill work and effective skill work you want guys to have, but it doesn't get developed fully on air. I'm curious how you kind of approach that with some of your, we'll go D guys here, but kind of bridging that gap of technique you want in the chaos.
Good question. I think you got to go, I'm a believer you got to go small part, different speed. So you have to walk it, jog a little bit faster, and then sprint it, right? And then go against a defense where it's like, okay, now I'm doing this, and then work on it. So it's always like these, some people like to call it the action in the action, right? So it's a 1-4-1, but we're working on the 2 exchanges, and you got to dive and a float, or something, whatever your language is. All right, this is what we're looking for, and a lot of it is walking through it. Now our guys are pretty bright, so you say things once or twice, they'll get it. I also think the biggest thing that we've done, and I would encourage other coaches to do it if they do not do it, is when we watch and prepare for other teams, not only we'll watch them, no doubt about it, but then we'll watch ourselves, and we'll watch ourselves in every drill. We'll watch our scout team do do, say, we're playing Maryland, right? And we'll watch, our guys do Maryland's offense. Now, our rules are, hey, when we have a scout rep, this is the action I want. Then after that, just play. I don't care. You can do whatever you want. And sometimes those guys on offense are like, oh, sweet, I can go behind the back. Dude, this is going to be sweet. There is no consequence, baby. I don't care. I want you to score. Those guys, their goal is to have me blow a gasket, so that's, and they do a pretty good job of it, but again, that helps our guys play a little bit more free, working on those skills that are so important, those fundamental skills, in all sorts of environments, right? The controlled environment where it's whistle, breakdown, backpedal, whatever you're teaching. And then all of a sudden it's okay against the maybe against another moving target, right? We can all defend a cone, right? But you got to be able to defend a target, right? But you got to also watch it. You got to watch yourself on film and go, oh gosh, that doesn't look right. Or, oh, I see what coach is doing. And when you break it down in every phase, meaning those different speeds, then the mental makeup, it'll allow you to play faster. And then when you get to those chaotic, that gray area, which everybody talks about, which is the hardest thing to defend, or play out of, in lacrosse nowadays, it makes you more comfortable, right? And I think those tenets we talked about before, those are guidelines, right? And at the end of the day, it's trying to score on a possession or stop a possession. It's really that simple.
You get your defenders, hey, freshman, this is how we approach the ball. Or I'm showing you how to do it. You're approaching a few cones. Now we're approaching a few moving targets. Now we're playing. Hey, we talked about it like this. Here's a video of you playing. You're not doing any of it now. How do we get your stick out here? How do we get your angle through the right path we want to take to this guy? Something like that.
Yeah, well, I also think, everybody's different, right? I don't think, and just something I've kind of learned where I was able to do certain things like, and maybe some, like a big discussion defensively is, can guys V-hold or not? Are they backside hold guys or are they V-hold guys? Well, I feel like we would do a bad job as coaches if we didn't enhance your strengths. If you're a backside hold guy, be a backside hold guy. If you're a V-hold guy, be a V-hold guy. There are a million different ways to play individual defense. Like we had when Jack Rowlett was with us, he would, do things and, our guys would watch and be like, oh my gosh. I'm like, guys, he's an unbelievable athlete. He gets the spots a lot quicker than a lot of people. But he was like, I can't V-hold. He's like, I can't do it. His approaches, stuff that we used to talk about in the office, and we would incorporate that to things that we do. And I was like, it was great to just have he did it because he was comfortable. He did it because that was a strength of his. Now, maybe it was outside the box, but for him, it was the norm. So who am I to take away what you do best and say, well, this is how we do things? No, you do that really well. We probably recruited you here to do that really well. We want you to continue to do that, but you're going to play different than that guy. Every defender comes in different, shapes, sizes, whatever, strength levels, whatever it may be. Like, let's use what you do best to our advantage. Who am I to, if you're a big physical guy and say, we want you to play a guy at the head of your stick, that makes no sense to me. We're taking your best attribute and throwing it away. So I don't think you can coach defense in a cookie cutter style where everybody does the same thing.
Well, one thing building off that, and we were down at the IMLCA convention and just asking a few guys, like, how much time in a fall ball do you really have as a player to get that much better, each year? Like I remember myself, like freshman fall and sophomore fall made big jumps, but they go by like that, so it's a very interesting thing where sometimes like these guys that you're recruiting, if you're not like happy with how they've gotten to as a senior in high school, like they've got to lean into some of those strengths. They're not going to completely change in 2 years.
I almost sometimes, almost 4 years sometimes is not enough to develop and I don't mean this in a bad way or as a knock on us or anything. If somebody is not good at something, I don't know 4 years is enough time to make sure they're elite at something. Let's figure out what you do well. Let's make maybe some of that skill set that maybe isn't great. Let's make it okay. Right. So, just get a little bit better at it over time. Then you'll see a huge jump in that. But I think that's it's an issue, right? You go, well, what's the balance? We got to do this. We got to do that. I mean, there are colleges that are starting practice next week and the first game essentially on the college schedule is February 1. And you're also talking, we're not even talking about scrimmages before that. I mean, teams are going 9-10 days of practice and then they're playing somebody else. So this turned into not a season. It turns in when the guys come back, in the fall, I think coaches have evolved, and where maybe it's not all fundamental skills for the first 2 months like I used to have. And remember when I played, we started practice the Monday after the Super Bowl at the end of January. Our first game was March 1. We had like 4 weeks of preseason. It took forever. Right? You had some scrimmages and all that stuff. Now it's 10 days. It's like, boom, here we go. So what are the things that are most important? That's why the fall, I think, is evolved a lot. And the NCAA rules have changed where you can have more team practice, which is great in those segments. But, you're putting more in the fall because you realize this is a year process. It's not just developmental. Yes, it is in some aspects to get a little bit better, but also you got to put some more things in because you don't have that 4 or 5 week buffer in the spring. You're starting right away, and it's like you got to get going. So, and again, you want to expose guys to repetitions and different scenarios, and the more you play, the more those come about, which is really important too.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, even just going back a little, that you said that was interesting was your guys' objective as a defense. You solve for defensive efficiency. That's important to you. You're trying to keep the other team from scoring. So whether or not a guy V-holds or butt end holds or whatever, that doesn't win. It could win games if you can give up less goals that way. But to put your foot in the ground and say, this is how defense has to be played because Coach Warne believes in this is how defense has to be played, right? Like the goal is like give up less goals. So however you look at, and I think that's the art of great coaching to a degree. You look at the guys you have every year and you might coach those guys. There's some, I'm sure, standards you have in the way you do things, but some guys it's like, hey, you're good at this. We go have less goals when you do this. You can do this. Like Jack Rowlett, you can go over the head because somehow you get it 90% of the time. Like other guys, you probably can't do what Jack Rowlett can do. I can't do what Jack Rowlett can do, So there is that element of understanding strengths that I don't know that even as I evolve, I get more comfortable with that because I think sometimes as a coach, you want to be like, oh, this is how you should do something. And there's, I think, an art to figuring out where to put your foot in the ground on certain things versus where to allow guys to be themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's to your point. It's funny. It's defensively, give up less goals. And then, as a head coach, it's so funny. Now, when I was an assistant, you cared about, goals against. That was important. It was like, that was your side of the field. Offensive coordinators, I want to score 15 goals. That was important. As a head coach, I got 2 things I care about. 2 letters, W's and L's. I don't care. I got to have more W's and L's. If we win 19-18 or 6-5, still the same. It goes under the W column. That's all I care about. So putting your guys, again, and to Deemer's point before, it's like, we want guys to play fast. When they play fast, they're comfortable, right? So if you can enhance that strength even more and be like, hey, you can do this here, you're going to play faster. The kids are going to have confidence, and a confident kid who understands what he needs to do, all within the team concept. So we get it. But when those things are going at 100 miles an hour, like when you're confident, you feel good and comfortable what you're doing, you'll be a presence offensively or defensively, I think.
So, Coach, from a technical perspective, I always enjoyed over the last couple of years, Matt and I, one of the parts of the game that we would drill a lot was, the attackman at X fading, while the defender on ball side on a wing dodge is stealing some space. But then how's that X guy playing around the pipes? And I felt like that situation we teased out a lot, and it's a really good like cat and mouse battle, like the smart guy and getting to different sides of the cage and how you play off the ball as an offensive player. What are some of those types of situations that you feel like are really topical in today's game that puts defenses in tough spots and you feel like you guys need to keep working on or keep being aware of as the game evolves?
Well, are you going to be able to have an edit button for everybody that we play against when they listen to this thing? All right.
Yeah, remember, you just give us the signal, and we'll.
If I go like this, it means no. I'm not talking about it, right? No, I think, as an overall perspective, right? You look at the offenses, the way teams are now constructing them. right? You look at there's a crease, there is no crease, whether it's the pairs type looks, right? Puts a lot of stress on the defense. The cat and mouse game at X, right? What do? Do you shut X? Do you stay ball side because you're a team that likes to show off X? Do you mirror and go whatever side that guy is? Do you go, hey, I don't even want to deal with it. I'm going to shut X. That ball ain't getting there. So there's a million things. There's always a last one with the marker wins, no doubt about it. But when those things happen within, a possession, sometimes guys are, there's so many things going on. Sometimes they forget, or sometimes they're, like, oh gosh, I didn't shut X there, or oh, that attackman's like, oh, that guy's over there, he's trying to mirror me. I'm gonna try and bust, and send it up, pick and slip, or just get leverage that way, whatever it may be. It's those things are the things that you see in college lacrosse, because we're all copycats, right? So whatever was successful last year, there's a lot of smart guys out there and saying, oh, this worked. Let's see how we can incorporate that into our offense, our defense, our riding and clearing game, whatever it may be. Way back when, as some coaches say, what's old is new and new is old, right? And you have to evolve. You have to be able to adapt. But lacrosse is still a really, really conceptual game. And when you understand those concepts and defend the concepts, those happen every time the ball is thrown. Somebody cuts, somebody picks, somebody approaches, somebody's, declaring to, be a hot guy. There's always going to be a fill. There are things that will be consistent. So there's a bunch of things, but I think, when you take what teams are doing offensively, defensively, what had the skill level of the kids, maybe I look at it through a defensive lens and say, anytime the ball moves, I was like, oh boy, here we go. And the guy might be catching the ball in the perimeter 20 yards, because you just never know. You can jam the ball inside and a guy can shoot it between his legs now, where that didn't really happen a while ago. So it's always interesting. And I think, but if you teach those concepts, and if you break them down and teach those parts of the whole, you got to expose your guys to see, offensive, defensively, what needs to happen, or what can happen, what are the options, and what gives them the best chance to have success. I don't know if that answered the question, but it's kind of...
Well, I think the same thing works the other way, where you can overwhelm these offensive guys with all their options too. It's like, you're like, okay, guys, you could dodge here, and then look here, and dodge here. It's like, at some point you're handcuffing your guys by showing them a million options to attack the defense, and they're not looking at it like a coach because they're college kids.
Yeah, they're college kids. They're waiting to go to class right after practice, and meanwhile, we're all sweating here watching film and breaking down on this and that and going, oh my gosh, this guy does this. And like, coach, I got a test. I don't care. I'm out of here. Or I got to go. The cafeteria's going to close. I got to eat, and it's funny to listen to those guys. It's amazing, right? It's amazing. Those guys are, they're characters.
Yeah.
One of the things that got brought up with you, was innovation, and as I mean this as a strength, given to willingness to fail and willingness to hey, they do this, looking at it schematically, this offense does this, everybody plays it like this, but why wouldn't we just do this? And I think Mike Earhart maybe mentioned that Xbox and Jordan were kind of some of your brainchild defenses, and we ran both of those, and sometimes you hear things like that, you just assume they're just things that are out there. And I believe, and I might be wrong, but I believe you have kind of created some of these innovative systems or packages or concepts that teams tend to still use, or at least coin them and made them a little more popular. How did you develop, I guess, confidence, or were you just kind of being logical and trusting yourself and saying like, hey, we're just going to do this a little weird, but I think it'll mess up what a team's doing? Because I think some coaches aren't comfortable not doing something that's a little weird, even though if it might make sense to do it.
Right. First off, I got to check the patent office, because there better be some royalties coming my way if they have. I'm not sure. I would say, listen, a lot of it just happens by watching film, right? You'll watch something, you go, what if we did something like that, right? And that's maybe the curiosity, right? Maybe giving the guys, maybe we're stale, right? Maybe we're doing the same thing over and over, and maybe it's in April right? Where it's like, okay, we're doing the same thing. And all of a sudden, like, hey guys, we have this. Maybe that sparks a little urgency, a little interest, and gets guys more engaged. I don't know. A lot of it will probably come into effect by watching film and just going, they do this. What if we did that? Right? Like, what does that look like? Right? And then what happens is it looks great on the dry erase board I have under my desk, and I'm like, at home, and my son's drawing on it, put his Fortnite password on it and all that stuff. But like, hey, does this work? Does this work? And I look at it, I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, let's do that here. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. These guys will never get that. And it's like you do it. And then, kind of like what I said before early on when we talked about game plan, where, I know a couple of guys that you've mentioned where we've had some nice conversations about defenses that we've ran, and they might not like them as much as I do, and they want to. A couple guys have said some things that I might have cried, later on, but I'm okay. But they've been like, "Why are we doing this? This makes no sense." And again, that's all part of what we talked about before. If we want a player-led team and a player-led, defense, so to speak, those guys are playing. I'm not. What are they comfortable at? Hey, coach, we feel great about this. Let's go with it. Coach, we do not feel great about it. This guy doesn't get it. This guy doesn't understand. And we're like, on that Friday in that gameplay meeting, we throw it out and say, hey, that's what it is. So I just think a lot of it is understanding what teams want to accomplish on offense, right? How they're doing their things, who are their guys, what are their tendencies, and then going, all right, are there things where, can we control the tempo? Can we throw something at them, right, to slow them down? Maybe they have an elite guy that it's like, oh my gosh, and and believe me, I've probably made up more defenses than not. There's no doubt about it that we have no idea. They have some awesome names that they don't exist anymore because we're throwing them away. But it's all part of the process, right? It's to the point we had before. There's 7 guys playing defense, 6 guys playing offense. Right now, a shot clock is 60 seconds. Do you really want to have 37 slides? Do you really want to have 37 different offensive concepts? You only have 60 seconds. Like, be good at a couple things and go from there.
Coach, what about when you're watching film? Like even myself, like I'm a beginner guy getting into coaching defense. You're talking a lot about watching film. What would be the first 2 or 3 things that I should point my attention to when I'm watching back a possession without giving away any secret sauce?
No, you have to teach your guys how to watch film, right? Because everybody wants to watch themselves.
Yeah.
How cool do I look on the ball?
And even
Where's
as
the
a
ball?
coach too, I'd love to hear from a coaching, if I'm trying to design a team. So yeah.
And other coaches might be different. And that's, for me, what I watch, I just watch the inside, right? I watch the some people call it the paint, the heart, whatever that area is in between the hashes from 5 yards to about 11 yards. That's what I watch the entire time, because then I'm able to see what comes in, what goes out offensively, and then you have to watch on the ball. So you kind of watch each possession twice to see what are we doing individually and what are we doing collectively. And I think that's really important. We have to tell our guys to go, listen, you have to watch off ball first. If you're going to watch it twice, and like we said before, our guys got a million things going on. We watch a ton of film here, and I think that's important. Not that we want our guys to fall asleep in film or anything that'll take up a lot of time, but I think everything is so visual now, the learning, you got to see yourself do it. And the one thing that I hear a lot, and I'm sure you guys hear it as well, is, oh, coach, I get it, but when I do it full speed, I slow down again. So that's how you get the repetition piece. But to be able to see what you're doing, but watching the inside out, right? Watching the inside out first. That's really important. And then if you're going to watch an individual, watch yourself, but pick somebody else out and put yourself in those shoes when you're watching film, even on the field. That's how you steal reps. Because usually when we're saying there's a correction by a coach, yes, it's to that guy, but it's to everybody. But if you're an offensive guy and you hear me talk, you're like, okay, that's what they're thinking defensively. How can I manipulate that? If Coach Hogan's talking, right? Our defensive guy's like, oh, they're trying to do that now. Oh, if we just rotate or we just bump through them, I just talk to you, like you start doing that, you're going to advance your IQ a lot more rep by rep. And that's where a lot of football coaches talk about those mental reps. And that's why football coaching is so unique with the periods that they have. Lacrosse is a different game, but they'll work on this situation, this situation, but everybody's watching. And the more you can have everybody watch, right? The other thing I think is great for young coaches when they're in practice is, yes, you want chemistry with the guys that are going to play, but I also think it's really important that everybody plays with everybody, right? So now you got an older guy, maybe a 3-year starter with a freshman. Like in the fall, it's great. Like you see those guys who know what they're doing. They're using words that we haven't even talked about. We put in like in April the year prior, and they're talking about stuff. And the freshman's like, how do I hold my stick? How am I supposed to stand? And it's just awesome to see. And they coach them up, and it's that peer leadership and learning is just as valuable for our guys. So doing those things is really important. It allows our guys to learn in every which way possible.
Coach, final question here. We know you're a busy guy, got a big list this weekend and season coming up, but one I wanted to hit. You just got named an assistant coach for the USA men's national team. Very, very different than, every, coaching college, just the cadence of touch points, the age and level of player, just the style of game, the rules. Curious, just like, maybe what it means to you, and if you've had conversations with like a Coach Ampler, or how you've been thinking about approaching that position, and just and what it kind of means to you to get that role.
Yeah, no, it's certainly an honor and really, really humbling, right? And I feel like, anytime you can represent your country is something like, you have that opportunity, you got to do it. Like you really do. I am looking forward to it. And of course, my relationship with Coach Amplo and certainly Coach Zanowski and Coach Tierney as when assistant and Coach Toomey from Loyola, who everybody loves. It's just hearing the stories from those guys and the battles and, what I think, and you watch a lot of these documentaries, whether it's Netflix or 30 for 30s about teams coaching, and roughly revolves around, basketball, right? And it's like the dream teams. And then all of a sudden, the redeem team and all those things. You're like, these are the top level guys in our sport. That's going to be really cool. I'm not sure I'm going to teach them anything, but it's going to be really cool to be around that. Who they're playing against is the best in their country, and this is the best in our country, and it's a battle. It's about pride. There's so many other factors. Yeah, it's a world championship, but it'll be, and you've been part of it, and I have not. So I'm listening to especially listening to Joe and his stories and the conversations we had with Coach Tierney, Coach Toomey, and Coach Benson as we start moving forward towards 27. Just hearing what they're talking about, just some of the things. And it's so cool that it's so hyped up, and it's 2 years away, 2.5 years away. But we're not with that team for 2.5 years. It's only a couple of events, and then you get together, and there's so many things that go into it, and you've been part of it, and hearing your stories and reading about it and doing some research on it. I'm so excited to be a little piece of it. And it'll be so cool going to Japan. It'll be my second time in Japan. I was there when I was at UMBC. Awesome country, totally different. It'll be a great experience. I'm not sure the 14-hour flight is awesome, but that's all part of it, and you get to be with guys and represent your country. And again, we talked about giving back to lacrosse, kind of like why I got into coaching. I've had so many awesome experiences, and to be around the elite of the elite. It's going to be. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our conversation today, we kind of went back and forth between technical, schematic, and also just team building. I think where this over indexes, at least in my experience, and what Coach Danowski, Amplo, Tierney, and Toomey did such a great job with, was building that like connection piece and taking the challenge for this is people coming in from all over without the amount of time that a college team has, and how do you get them to get on the same page and buy in and all that stuff we were talking about in the beginning that you've done such a great job with at Georgetown, at least in my experience, has seemed like a huge part that the coaches are like a vital piece of.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. But at the end of the day, and we kind of talked about it before, we can have all these posters and all this stuff. If the guys don't do it, it won't happen. And I think that's part of that buy-in. That's that trust factor. And it all starts, with the relationship piece, where the first pillar of relationships is trust and honesty, right? And if you have that, you can have those conversations and talk about some things, and that collective want or belief that we can get things done together. Then we'll give ourselves a chance, and hopefully we have more success than not.
Awesome. Well, Coach, we really appreciate the time, and we learned a lot, and really looking forward to watching you guys this spring, and you keep building the program at Georgetown, and we appreciate all the support.
You guys are awesome, and what you do for lacrosse, and obviously both of you guys were excellent players at Maryland and Duke respectively, and what you're doing now, and I admire you guys, and you guys do an awesome job, and keep doing what you're doing. All right, and we will certainly stay in touch.
Appreciate it, Coach. Great talking to you.
All right, thanks, fellas.